Yes, travel agency. I would like to finalize my vacation plans. I was thinking Aruba, Jamaica, Bermuda, Bahama, Key Largo, Montego, and maybe a little place called Kokomo. I want to get there fast and then take it slow. Well, that's where I want to go. Way down in... Hello? I guess they're not cocktail fans. Welcome back, friends. Time for another Beach Boys concert discussion. If you're looking for part 2 of my collab with Steve Lewis on the weirdest Beach Boys tracks, don't be discouraged. That's coming very, very soon. Thanks to those of you who watched and commented. Make sure you check out Steve Lewis's Beach Boys channel, Steve Lewis, The Beach Boys Basement, if you haven't already. So, summer is not complete without at least one Beach Boys concert. Sadly, for me, the only real options were seeing Mike and Bruce, who use the regular Beach Boys name, but I was able to see 2 shows. So we'll talk about the non-Club Kokomo show first, and the Club Kokomo show second. The first concert I attended was at Chautauqua Institution Amphitheater in Chautauqua, New York. I was able to get a set list, and I'll take you through the show in just a moment using this. But you might recall, if you've watched my videos for a while, I have seen them play there before. 2 years ago, I saw them there on a double bill with the Temptations. The biggest takeaway from that show was the security, as it was only a couple days after the author Salman Rushdie had been attacked, so there were state cops everywhere. We all had to be wanded, turn out our pockets and so on. None of that this year. This year was much more laid back, much less of a security presence. One thing that struck me as unusual when I arrived at the show, I usually buy my merchandise, my t-shirts and things, before the show begins. They had very little for sale. They had a handful of t-shirts, these blue hats from last year. I thought these were discontinued, so I was kind of surprised to see them. They had Christian Love's CD, which we'll get back to that in a second, and they had a ladies' tank top, and that was really about it. Oh, and a hoodie, which, how could I forget that? So I'll show you the new shirt for this year. I thought for sure they'd have some of the new Surf and Safari themed wear, but they didn't have any of it, so nothing with that yellow truck on it. So this is kind of the new design there. What made me mad about this shirt, though, back is completely blank. So still pushing that America's Band tour image, but not actually using it to promote a concert tour. And I thought that was kind of frustrating. And I did buy the hoodie. The hoodie was not cheap. I only have one Beach Boys sweatshirt, so I thought, get this. I like that design. But they had very little. I wasn't expecting to see the blanket or the drinking glass or the pillow or anything like that. But I was hoping they'd have a little bit more than just a couple shirts, a hat, some odds and ends. I was hoping they'd have a decent merchandise selection. So the show was very packed, and it took a while for everybody to get in and all that stuff. I got to watch the sound check, which was really interesting, as the amphitheater is sort of like a bowl, and you could stand up top before the show began, look down. I could see some of the people practicing, and that was really cool. But finally, they opened up the gates, and they had the Chautauqua Institution PR lady do a little opening bit, just talking about what's on the summer schedule. And then the Beach Boys came out, and they jumped right in. So we start off with our little surfing suite here. Do It Again, Surf and Safari, Catch a Wave, Hawaii, and Don't Back Down. Don't Back Down was a little rough, but the rest of them were really good, and the group just clipped along. John Bolton, last summer I called him Jim Bolton. Jim Bolton was the baseball player. John Bolton's the drummer. John Bolton is a great new addition to the group, and we'll come back to him later. But he was absolutely on fire during the show, and doing a lot of little gags and things where he'd pretend to eat his drumstick, or he'd pretend to bang his head on the drum, things like that. Really fun, really interesting. Mike Love looked good, I gotta say. He was pretty spry, seemed like he was in a good mood. Bruce is a little more sluggish than Mike is, but the songs he had to sing for this concert, he did a nice job on overall. So Don't Back Down was a little rough, but the rest were very, very good. Mike Love talks about the Ramones, and then they do Rockaway Beach. That's been a staple for several years now, and that leads into Surfin' USA. Very good, got the audience moving, got everybody really excited. So then we have kind of a change of pace there. We have Surfer Girl, and during Surfer Girl, Mike Love encourages everyone to take out their cell phones, turn on the flashlights, and wave them in unison to the song. Almost everybody participated. Really great moment. This audience was definitely in the mood for summer fun and Beach Boys songs, and there were a lot of young people there to kind of pep things up, and yeah, overall, very nice so far. Then we have Christian Love doing Some Summer, a song he released last summer for his album, and his album was for sale there. I've never listened to it. It's pretty low on my Beach Boys to get list. This one, the audience didn't engage as much because I don't think anybody really knows the song. It is fairly new. I don't know that it got a tremendous amount of radio airplay or anything like that. It's a nice enough song. The one thing that stood out to me was as there was a large screen above the stage playing videos as the Beach Boys played. There was a video of Christian Love teaching his dad the lyrics that he had to sing. I think Mike Love did backing vocals. But Mike Love just looked so confused and so just disoriented as his son's standing with him at the microphone and Mike Love standing there, his mouth is slightly agape, looking like he's absolutely miserable. So I did laugh at that. But Some Summer, not a favorite of mine, probably my pick for the, I guess, least impactful song in their summer set this year, but interesting to see. I'm glad they're doing something new and something different. Bruce does You're So Good to Me. He does a pretty nice job. He doesn't get a ton of leads. They didn't do Disney Girls or anything like that. I don't think they're doing any of that this summer. But he does a pretty good job on it. And then John Bolton absolutely kills it on Darlin'. You know, his vocal delivery, vocal style, much different than Carl Wilson's or even Darian Saranha's. Darian, who had done it so well with Brian Wilson's band. But John Bolton kind of does it his own way, and I don't like it as well as those other versions, but it's his, and he does a fine job on it. Then we get everyone's favorite moment of the show, Ween! So Be True to Your School, which the audience loved. And there was a man in the very front row, probably in his early mid-50s, who was very drunk. And this is where he started kind of getting more, we'll put, involved in the show. Standing up and walking up to the stage, trying to climb on the stage, and demanding fist bumps from Mike Love. This was about when that began, and Mike Love obliged and gave him a fist bump and so on. But then In My Room, so we have a tonal shift. We have a fast song to a slow song, and all during In My Room, drunk man kept taking his pinkies, putting them in his mouth, and whistling as loud as he could over and over again, all during In My Room. He sounded like Harpo Marx on crystal meth. And I don't know what the point was. In My Room is not really an audience participation number. So that was a little distracting, but thankfully he stopped for Don't Worry Baby. In the past I've been very picky about Brian Eichenberger's rendition of Don't Worry Baby, but he's much better than he was last year, and he does a good job with it. Not as good as the original, of course, but you know, he does a fine job. Not an easy song to sing. And then we jump from Don't Worry Baby into the Hot Rod songs. Of course, lately Little Honda's been put in the Hot Rod set. And the Hot Rod songs always sound great. And big audience numbers, and Drunk Man actually led a mosh pit, Drunk Man and several teenagers, to the front of the stage during Little Honda and I Get Around, and they were jumping up and down, again trying to climb on the fence to climb on stage, and carrying on the whole time, but it wasn't really a big deal, because I Get Around is very much audience participation. Bruce is doing his, you know, stand-up gesture, so people are standing, people are dancing. It was fun. I'd never seen a mosh pit form like that, but hey, it was working, and it didn't seem like anything was too out of control. So you might notice at the bottom here, it says no intermission. Instead of an intermission, they played an advertisement for the Disney Plus documentary. And here's where the show went south pretty fast. So Mike Love didn't say that they weren't doing intermission. Sometimes he does a little joke that this show is divided into two parts. We'll call them part 1 and part 2, or something like that. He's done, or this is my favorite part of the show, intermission, that kind of stuff. He didn't do any of that. Instead, they kind of dimmed the lights a little bit, and the documentary ad came on the screen. Well, the mosh pit didn't break up, and all during this ad, they were yelling and screaming and jumping around. Now, I don't know how many of them saw the Disney Plus documentary and really liked it. I've reviewed the soundtrack album on my channel. Check that video out if you haven't already. But all during this ad, and like, it's an advertisement. You don't really need to scream and yell. But here comes the bigger problem. You might notice the next song on the list is Warmth of the Sun. And Michael went to tell a story about how Warmth of the Sun was written the day President Kennedy was killed. It's intended to be a sad song. He wanted to explain kind of what the lyrics meant that he and Brian had come up with. All during his story, the audience is screaming, they're yelling, they're jumping around. The kids are trying to climb on top of each other, like onto their shoulders or backs of their friends. And all during Warmth of the Sun, all this audience commotion. Alright, Warmth of the Sun is not an audience participation song. It's not a mosh pit song. And any beauty, any gravitas that this amazing song has, completely lost because of a rowdy, out-of-control audience. Which, by the way, the Chautauqua employees, who were very nice and very professional, but they weren't doing anything about this. They were just letting it happen. And then we go to Pisces Brothers. Mike goes to tell a story about George Harrison, about studying with the Beatles in India. He went to tell an anecdote about playing a UNICEF show and the curtain opening, and the Maharishi and the Beatles are in the very front row right in front of the Beach Boys and how scary that was. All that stuff. He couldn't do it. Again, the audience is screaming and carrying on and just going out of control. And Pisces Brothers, another slow song, not an audience participation song, ruined by an out-of-control crowd. So pretty disappointing. And again, the ushers, the Chautauqua Institution staff, still not doing anything to break this up. I Can Hear Music fared better as it's a more upbeat song, John Bolton singing lead, and doing a nice job too. Again, different style than what Carl Wilson would do, but very effective overall. And it was right, I'd say, in between I Can Hear Music and God Only Knows, that they kind of started to guide these people back to their seats, to tell the kids, hey, go back where you came from, all that kind of stuff. And drunk guy who was putting his pinkies in his mouth and whistling, they took him aside, and he was gone for a short time, but he came back, so they probably told him, hey, shut up or get out. So they finally did something about it, and God Only Knows, which Bruce sang, wasn't, completely without that, but it was certainly much better than Warmth of the Sun and Pisces Brothers had been in terms of audience, I guess, participation. After that, we get into Sloop John B., California Dreamin', California Girls, and Wouldn't It Be Nice, all of which hyped the audience back up again, but they weren't out of control or anything like that, and the group did a nice job on each of them. Then we come to All Summer Long. They actually did a shorter version of All Summer Long, and I thought that might be unique to this show because the audience was so crazy. I figured they'd start cutting out songs. But I guess they did it the same way the second time I saw them, so I think All Summer Long they're just doing a shorter version. It doesn't have that kind of instrumental break in the middle. Help Me Rhonda, which they went with audience participation, which they got. And for Do You Want to Dance, the ushers even said anyone who wants to dance can come back up and they can reform this mosh pit now that it's a more appropriate time. And Do You Want to Dance went over really well. The group did not do the last song you see on that section, Wild Honey. They skipped it. I'm thinking it was probably cut due to the audience. John Bolton would have sang that if they had done it. He did it, I know, last year and did a nice job on it too. But Wild Honey, which is a pretty hard rocker, drunk guy might start throwing things or whatever. Why even go to a show like that if you're so out of control? I don't know. And then lastly, we have kind of the encore big finale there. Barbara Ann, Good Vibrations, Kokomo, and Fun, Fun, Fun. Audience going crazy. I'll make sure to include some photos of both the audience before and after the mosh pit. So overall, band sounded great. Kind of surprised by a lack of merch and kind of disappointed, as I would say it's one of my least favorite concerts I've been to simply because of the fellow audience members kind of going out of their way to ruin everything. There was no VIP or backstage or anything offered for this show. I was able to snag a set list, sadly not a guitar pick. That's okay, I don't get those very often. For all the shows I've been to, I've only ever gotten one. But I had a nice time, but it would have been a lot better with a calmer audience. Fun set list though. Now let's talk about the Youngstown Amphitheater show and also Club Kokomo. And now we come to the meat and potatoes of this video, recorded live at a Beach Boys cocktail party. Well, not quite, but about a Beach Boys cocktail party. Let's talk concert number 2 at Youngstown Amphitheater and also the Club Kokomo VIP pass. Now, I've seen the Beach Boys play in Youngstown multiple times. Indeed, the first time I ever attended one of their shows was at Youngstown, and I've seen them play at the amphitheater before. Beautiful place. And the set list was mostly the same. There were a few changes. For example, the Youngstown show, they did Wendy, claiming it was impromptu. There was a woman in the front row who had a large sign saying that she was named Wendy after the song. And so Mike Love said, "Can we do it?" And the band said, "Of course we can do it." And they played it. Bruce's vocals weren't very good on it. It sounded like something was wrong with his mic. But, I mean, the rest of the group sounded great, and I think it was more of a technical issue than Bruce not singing it properly. They also did When I Grew Up to Be a Man, which was a lot of fun, and they did something I've never heard live, so it was the highlight of the show for me. They did the title song from Still Cruisin', "Come On, Let's Cruise, You Got Nothing to Lose," which I think is a very underrated Beach Boys song, and it's weird because it's not really on greatest hits packages or box sets or anything, but yet it's still a live stable, which is very unusual in the Beach Boys world. So I was really happy to hear it. They skipped a few songs too, like Darlin'. They didn't even pretend they were going to do Wild Honey, anything like that. So a similar set for the most part. The surfing songs, the car songs, the Pet Sound stuff, all the same. Much better this time though, because even though there were still lots of teenagers and several inebriated people in the crowd, they were under control, and honestly, it was a lot of fun. They were using their inebriation in a good way, instead of a disruptive way. I will say the Beach Boys were able to get several photos of the audience participating at the Chautauqua show, especially the young people, the teenagers, which I guess they could use for good PR, but at the end of the day, a much less rowdy audience makes for a much better show. And the Youngstown show, sadly, I didn't get a set list. A whole lot better than the Chautauqua show was overall. Similar set list, not quite the same, but similar enough. It's all in who you see it with, I guess. So at the beginning of the show, I made sure to go on Mike Love's website and purchase the VIP backstage pass, the Club Kokomo cocktail party pass there. There's the back of it and the front of it. We'll get to the autographs here in a second. It's been several years since the Beach Boys have really offered VIP stuff, backstage stuff, any of that. I mean, that's how I've met the Beach Boys, and I've managed to meet at least the 5 core ones, plus Blondie Chaplin, plus several of their supporting musicians over the years. But they kind of, after COVID, started phasing that stuff out, and I get it, especially because you couldn't do it during COVID, of course. So they're like, yeah, something we don't need to pick up again. But, of course, they are really pushing the Club Kokomo drinks. We'll get to all those here in a second. So it makes sense they'd bring it back for that. $250. It can be purchased through Mike Love's website in the VIP section. That is the same price as the old VIP backstage tickets were. Here's the thing again for you. And interestingly, and Tara Reichert, the Beach Boys PR lady, asked me to pass this on, that if you do a Club Kokomo pass, you don't get a goodie box in the mail. It used to be in the old days you get an album or a book or something like that, a signed piece or whatever in the mail, and you don't get that anymore. She said all the prizes are given right at the event, and the reason they need your mailing stuff is that if they raffle something off or they have a drawing, then they can know your address, they can mail it to you, that kind of thing. But for the most part, there's nothing. I didn't get a fancy poster or a coffee table book or anything like they gave out in the old days. So I had to fight with the lady at the desk because she claimed there was no VIP pass, but I had my receipt, and indeed, when she looked, there was an envelope with my name on it. And I got this lanyard, and I was told where to go at the end of the show. You always have to double check with people because they don't always tell everybody at the venue what's going to happen afterwards. So I made sure I asked around with the ushers and stuff and got all the directions I needed. Sat through the great show. Again, a few song changes, but overall a much better experience. And finally, I got to go backstage into this little tent to drink cocktails with Mike Love and talk Beach Boys stuff. So one thing we all got were our little goodie things here. Here is the decal we all got, "How do you Kokomo?" the slogan for Club Kokomo cocktails. They also brew their own rum, and I think gin. I guess I should say distill it, not brew it. We got a Club Kokomo cocktail napkin. That's pretty cool. And of course they had these to use. They had extra ones of these. I wish I had taken some, but I didn't think to. And we got our Club Kokomo light up glasses. You might have seen this earlier. America's Band, the Beach Boys VIP after party. And if you push the button on the bottom, here it is. Ooh, didn't stay lit there. There it goes. Purple. The button's kind of finicky sometimes. Green. Kind of light blue. It's gold. We have a darker blue. Let's see. There we go, and there's multicolor. That's what I had it on earlier. So pretty nifty stuff. Now we were told we could bring a couple items to have signed, and I brought my markers with me just in case, because I remember from last summer meeting Bobby Figueroa, it pays to have your own writing utensils because you never know when someone else isn't going to share theirs. And I promised Mike Love and Bruce Johnston the last time I met them when the Feel Flows tour was going on, we were hanging out backstage. I said, next time I see you, I'm bringing the LA Light album on 8-track. I'm known as the 8-track guy. And indeed, I brought that, and you can see I got it signed. Mike on top, Bruce on the bottom. Now, I've met Mike Love a few times, and usually it's a positive experience, but not always. It's gotten a little chilly, not outright hostile, but a little chilly over the years a couple times. And I kind of brought LA Light album to see if he finally wanted to talk about Sumahama. He got really mad at me for mentioning it in the past. You know, maybe he thinks it's kind of corny now, singing in Japanese and all that. But it is one of my favorite songs on LA Light album. So I thought, I'd bring it just in case. But Mike was in a really good mood. He came in and sat with us. There were 5 people, 2 older married couples and me. He came in and sat down, and we were each given these 4 little cups, each color-coded to match a different Club Kokomo beverage. There are 4 different beverages, or 4 different cocktails, I guess I should say, because they make liquor as well. There's Afternoon Delight, Cocoa Mojito, and Mystique, all of which are rum-based cocktails with various fruit. Mike Love proudly proclaims that they use little to no artificial additives, flavors, or colors, so that's good. An all-natural cocktail experience. And then the blue cup, which is this one, goes with the gin cocktail called Excitation. So, gin-based stuff. And I used to drink gin. I used to drink gin and lime juice a lot, because that's what Philip Marlowe drank. But it's been years since I've done that. Gin doesn't really agree with me much anymore. But I have to say that you really taste the gin in this for a gin cocktail. I was kind of surprised. And the rum ones were all very good. Different fruits and different flavors, depending on what you like. I'm sure you'll have a favorite. But they were really smooth. They were a tad warm. You could tell they'd been taken out of the cooler kind of before the show, and maybe sat outside a little bit. It was a warm day, and maybe a little bit. They could have put them in koozies or something like that. But Mike came in, and we all got our drinks and sampled them, and we all sat down at a table. And it was such a weird experience to literally sit next to Mike Love at a table. And of course, we all gave him objects to sign. The husbands of these older married couples had huge bags filled with records, CD booklets, all kinds of stuff, a big stack of things to sign. I just had the tape and my lanyard. You know, I'm not going to give Mike like 7 things he needs to sign. And I could tell that some of the people were a little bit frustrated. But Mike signed everything. He didn't fuss about it. And he sat down and kind of just started talking. And it was really interesting because people weren't asking Mike questions about songs or albums or tours. Mike was just kind of telling anecdotes. He talked about his house in St. Martin in the Caribbean, how hurricanes keep out the riffraff and it's so expensive to live there, and that seems to be kind of the money pit that he's in right now because a storm will blow through and damage his house, but he can afford to have it fixed, but the next storm blows through. It was really interesting. And he talked about how, oh yeah, you know, my wife and my son, they're in charge of making these cocktails back at the distillery in California, and you know, they make me drink them, and I have to sit there and drink the cocktails and all that kind of stuff. He was kind of laughing about that. And he talked about playing a lot of children's charities and how kids have the weirdest favorite Beach Boys songs. He said there was this little girl, about 9 or 10. He said she looked like a human doll. She had like blonde curls and everything. And he asked this little girl, "What's your favorite Beach Boys song?" And she said 409. And he was just amazed by this. How would this little girl like 409 when she doesn't even know what a 409 is? That kind of thing. It was really interesting to hear Mike just share kind of stories like that, talking about his family. He mentioned he'd been married multiple times, which is, I think, putting it lightly. But he said, yeah, marriage is kind of like the stock market. You gotta know when to just cash out and walk away. Maybe that's wise advice, I don't know. Pretty interesting stuff, but it was neat just to sit with him and just kind of listen to him talk. You know, sometimes Mike is very reserved. Indeed, the very first time I met him, he practically refused to speak. He just wanted to get it over with, sign things and take off. But he was so candid and so nice. He doesn't do handshakes, and I kind of remembered that from before, but he gave everyone a nice fist bump. He liked the fact that I insisted we all drink a toast with one of our little cups to good vibrations, which we did. He thought that was nice, so I guess I made Mike happy instead of angry for once. And it was honestly just a really nice time. And I was kind of surprised that, you know, I didn't think Mike was a drinker, as I know he's a vegetarian among other things, but I'm surprised that he does indeed enjoy a drink every now and then. And I don't blame him, because unlike drunk man putting his fingers in his mouth and whistling, there's a way to drink in a civilized, classy, intelligent way, and there's a way to be just a bellicose fool. And Club Kokomo was certainly the classy, intelligent way to do it, I think. So we were not told that Bruce was going to come back, but he did after a while, maybe just to see what was going on, have a little bit to drink. And Bruce handed him my 8-track, and he said, "Oh, wow." He said, "Mike Love and I worked on a great song on this tape called Sumahama. You ever heard it?" And he sang the first part of Sumahama, "There's a lover's leap in old Japan." And I finished the verse for him, "Where the lovers walk along the sand, hand in hand at Sumahama." And then conversation turned to what is kind of the odd man out on Here Comes the Night. That's a spoiler alert for my upcoming video with Steve Lewis. And that is the Here Comes the Night epic disco, 12-minute tune. And it turns out one of the husbands of the married couples had brought his copy of the 12-inch single. Now, he had the blue vinyl. This is only the regular factory issue black vinyl. But he had the blue one, and he wanted Mike and Bruce to sign the sleeve, and they were more than happy to do it. But Mike said, yeah, that's Bruce's brainchild, but it is a lot of fun. And Mike also joked, if we had a half an hour, we could sit and listen to Here Comes the Night. And I thought that was pretty funny, too. The longest song in the Beach Boys catalog, indeed longer than entire sides of some of their early albums. But it was fun to hear them kind of laugh and joke about it and be in a really good mood about the whole thing. So it was certainly an evening for the LA Light album across the board, I would say. So definitely worth checking out if you don't listen to this album. It's a good one. Bruce didn't have a lot of stuff to say, really. He asked all of us like what we did as a job, asked if we had family, that kind of thing. And he talked about his kids. You know, none of Bruce's kids are in show business, that I'm aware of anyway, but he mentioned one of his sons went to Oxford and graduated in Oxford, and another one of his sons was going to go, but then thought England was too cold and rainy. He wanted to go where it was warm, so he went to college in Australia instead, spur of the moment. I guess if you can afford it, then it's totally worth it. But it was so nice to sit and visit with Mike and Bruce, both of whom in very good moods, probably because the audience was so cooperative, probably because it had been such a fun show. Interestingly, I told Michael that we shouldn't have offered those cocktails at the Chautauqua show. I said, things were rowdy enough without people drinking these. And Mike said, yeah, they were pretty rowdy. Those teenagers were out of control. Felt like saying it wasn't the teenagers. It was the drunk 50-year-old and his friends leading the charge, But who knows? Maybe the teenagers were drunk too, I don't know. But all in all, it was a really fun experience. I also got a photo with John Bolton, the drummer. He dropped back just a little bit, and I got a nice photo op with him. And I told him, hey, I said, you do an amazing job. I said, not only are you fun to watch with all your gags and, pretending to whack your head on the drums, all that stuff, but you're an amazing drummer and a good singer. And he said, oh, thank you. We got a cool pose together. And I also took a picture with Tara Reichert, the PR lady, because she does so much to orchestrate things like this and smooth transitions for the Beach Boys from place to place. And probably people don't give her her due often enough. I agreed to pass on the message that if you do a Club Kokomo concert, you won't have anything mailed to you unless you win something later on. So I said I want a picture with her, and I'll include that picture here too, along with my pictures with Mike and Bruce and John Bolton. Club Kokomo shows, I was told they're offering more and more of them. This was the only one that was even remotely close to me, but if you get a chance, if you have the money and the time, absolutely recommend it. It's a lot of fun, and a chance not just to talk with the Beach Boys in a casual, fun setting. You know, you're not rushing around backstage or anything like that, but a chance to try some Beach Boys branded merchandise. I'll link the Club Kokomo website below. I don't know all the rules about its ordering, as it's alcohol. I know it's subject to different U.S. mail regulations and other things are. And of course, I don't know about international shipping either, so that's something you have to look on their website. I know I have fans in the UK who would probably want to order some too. I don't blame them. They're all very good, but I don't know all the policies for that. So at the end of the day, my Beach Boys, big summer adventure there, seeing them in concert again. Hope you enjoyed it. Please share some of your concert memories, or if you're going to an upcoming show, please share those below. Tune in for my part 2 with Steve Lewis coming here in a couple days. Until next time, my friends, go out there and catch a wave, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.